Hello everybody and welcome to the LFC Transfer Room with myself Louis, and in today's video we'll be taking a close look at the recent rant that Simon Jordan has gone on against Jurgen Klopp on TalkSPORT. We'll take a little dive into it and I'll have somewhat of a clap back on it because there's a lot of parts in it that I don't agree with and just feel like he's fallen into the old TalkSPORT niche of just playing up to the camera and for the likes and the clicks. So stick around and we'll get into it. TalkSPORT, the home of brilliant, honest football takes. Simon Jordan has become somewhat of a regular with his new spot with Jim White on at 10 o'clock. For anyone who actually listens to TalkSPORT, by the way, I don't expect many people who follow Liverpool to listen to the tosh that is TalkSPORT. But he's become somewhat of a regular and somewhat of a, I suppose, what you'd call a symbol of correctness, a bit of a listener favourite. Lots of people agree with his multiple takes, especially as it seems to go against the grain of what most people at TalkSPORT think on whatever matter they're talking about at that time. But it seems like he's lost that edge and has now resorted to just picking fights for the sake of picking fights. He's gone from what I'd consider a facts don't care about your feelings type of guy, which we all loved anyway, to just downright making up stuff for the sake of a story. So I'm just looking at the article here from TalkSPORT. He's gone in on Jurgen Klopp about his comments recently about fixture congestion, which Jordan Henderson also talked about in a recent interview, saying that player welfare isn't given enough thought and care. And Jurgen Klopp, after the Leicester game as well, said, I don't understand why we have to play the 26th and the 28th. And this is where, Simon Jordan's made things up a bit here. Jurgen Klopp very clearly said, brilliant, we play on the 26th. I understand that that's essentially a staple of British football. I'm more than happy to do that. But why do we have to play on the 28th? Why can't we just play on the 29th? Okay. So his whole thing was, let's just move one game, not even the Boxing Day one, the 28th. Let's just move it back a day to the 29th. That's fantastic. Give us 2 full days of break rather than just 1 full day. So we haven't actually got time to train. We've just got time for recovery and travel, and that's it. And that's obviously going to lead to potential injuries, and we'll get onto that in a minute. But it's not that radical of a change. I know that previously he's called for a winter break, which is now something that, football in England is seriously looking into. And as much as it annoys us fans because we just want to see our teams play because we love them so much, I'm not totally against it because ultimately I get the long-term aim. But I get beside myself. That's what he said. Keep the 26th. Let's just move the 28th. Simon Jordan has then come onto the airwaves at the news of the Leeds game on Boxing Day being cancelled, so not the game that Klopp was unhappy about. And he said, and I quote, Klopp will be happy now, won't he? The protocols are the protocols, and if they've met the requirements of the protocols, ... they wanted clarity, and we both know why they wanted clarity, as it was so they could find a way to get the games called off they wanted to get called off. Now they've got clarity, you will see the games called off like a deck of cards. From my understanding, it's Leeds who are the reason for this game being called off, not Liverpool. I mean, there must have been some mutual agreement there, but you can't just make shit up like this. There's nothing that Jurgen Klopp said that indicated that he wanted the Boxing Day game called off. Didn't talk about that, said he's well up for it, talked about the 28th. Simon Jordan doesn't mention this and then goes off on some weird tirade about how we're bowing down to the players and managers. They're getting far too much of it. Get on with doing your job. You don't have to have players involved in certain conversations and certain things. What you'll end up having is the game determined by how certain players want it to look. I don't get what he's talking about. Players get asked questions in press conferences. They'll give their take. When has that led to a change? When has a press conference led to a change in how football's approached? Maybe that player goes on and becomes a part of FIFA and ultimately decides changes. I don't know. But that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about players having too much of a say. It's just very strange for me. And there's lots of people like, oh, and this is where it gets slightly lost. And I want to give an explanation, because every time we get to this part of the year, you have some people saying, look, there's too many games back to back. We need to spread them out a little bit more for the sake of the players. Now, you can have a reasonable discussion about that, but what you get is a lot of people coming in and saying, oh, well, I work on an oil rig for 36 hours in a row and you don't hear me complaining. I'd love to just do a 90-minute workout each week. That's not what it's about. It's not, well, we can't play 90 minutes twice on however much money we're earning. That's ridiculous. Players want to play it, right? Which is another thing Simon Jordan goes on to say. He says, well, I know loads of players that want to play these games, which is cool and not relevant. He says, most players I know actually want to play these games. Of course they do. Jordan Henderson wants to play these games. Jurgen Klopp wants to manage in these games. No one's, if you took any of them out of the starting 11, any of those players, of course they'd be annoyed. If they played on the 26th, and if they don't play on the 28th as well, they'll be pissed off. They'll understand it, but they'll be pissed off. It's not about not wanting to play games. It's about, at the end of the day, they're doing what they love. They're in a very fortunate position in terms of wealth and fame and acclaim and all those sorts of things. We get that. It's a completely unoriginal point, and it's been done to death. I don't think we need to go in on that anymore. They are where they are, and that's all there is to it. At the end of the day, they're expected to, every time they go out on that pitch, represent their clubs, their fan base, and give absolutely 100% each time. Okay? When you're playing 3 games within 6 days or 2 in 4, you're not able to do that because, one, you're knackered. The body can only take so much. No matter how much money you're given, the body can only do so many things. Okay? So there's an element of being realistic that comes into play. And then leading on from that, just fatigue and the ability to pick up an injury. These players are elite professionals. They want to be the best at what they do. So if they're going out there and they're trying to be the best and they're not getting enough recovery time, they risk an injury that could absolutely destroy their career. We've seen that happen before. Players forced into retirement, players who never look the same again once they come back from something horrific. And when you put all these games in such close proximity, and the only argument you have for not changing that is that it's tradition, you can't be surprised when things like that happen. And when a player gets a terrible injury like that, it's not just the physical injury. And this is where Jordan Henderson's comments come in. There's a huge element of players' welfare coming into play here. And this is where, things like mental health, which TalkSPORT go on about incessantly, and then have people like Simon Jordan coming on and saying things like this and just outright dismissing claims about player welfare. It's the same as, ITV talking about mental health or the LGBT community and employing Piers Morgan on their chat shows. It's pure hypocrisy and just embarrassing. And this comments like these are the reason nothing will get done, because they're just saying, well, you're getting X amount of money, therefore you can go through a shit time and you should just be able to deal with it. You can play all these games, potentially ruin your career, and just get on with it because you've got all this money in the bank. It's difficult to come to this realization, but this is where you need to be mature and ready to have that conversation. Money, for regular people like me and you, it will solve a lot of our problems, all right? I'm not denying that. But it doesn't mean that you're going to be happy 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, all the time, no matter what comes at you, okay? If a player gets injured and they're out for a while, they could sink into depression. If a player's not monitored or looked after well, they could sink into some sort of addiction. Who knows? We go on and we go on and we go on about taking mental health seriously, and we make a big fuss out of sports stars who go through mental health periods of poor mental health, and we harp on about how heroic they are for coming through it. You can't just rely on players or people in general. Like, let's broaden this out, but you can't rely on people to just come through these things and then tell their story and say how brave they were, because then that's, you're just looking at when they get to the other side. There's never a focus on people who are going through it at the moment or are potentially going to go through it. And once you start focusing on that, that's when changes actually happen. So when you start listening to players who are telling you, look, we love playing football. However, even we are starting to realize that if you put games too close together, we're going to be knackered. And then there's a potential to get injured. There's a potential that we can't play to our best. And then the team suffers. And then you just got arseholes like Simon Jordan coming on, completely misquoting Jurgen Klopp, which seems to be a massive theme. I'm not sure why. It seems every time he gives an interview where he's asked a question, he gives an answer. People at TalkSPORT or any other newspaper outlet will completely blow anything he says out of proportion purely for headlines, and they won't even quote him properly. There's no quotes in this article on TalkSPORT about what Jurgen Klopp said. It's just Simon Jordan's reaction to it, where he's completely misquoted him, not recognised that the only game he's asked to be moved is the 28th. He was happy with the 26th. And ultimately, even though Liverpool versus Leeds has been postponed, Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool had nothing to do with it. We must have agreed with Leeds, but it was Leeds who were forced to pull out due to COVID within their team, meaning that they couldn't meet the protocols that the Premier League agreed on. So I'm glad I've got that out of my system. And if you agree, please let me know in the comments. If you don't, I don't have any respect for you. Okay? But let us know in the comments. Okay? Thank you so much for watching. This has been the LFC Transfer Room. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel to keep up with all of our future content. We have match watch-alongs, tactical analysis, and pre- and post-match reactions. So stay around for that. Follow the Twitter account as well at LFC Transfer Room for your absolute up-to-date news on everything Liverpool related. Thank you again so much for watching. I've been Louis, and we'll see you in the next video.